The New York Rangers have been handed a hefty fine by the NHL for their comments on NHL Player Safety and calling for George Parros to be fired, and we have more details on the aftermath of the front office shakeup at MSG. We'll discuss the latest coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some more news and some more developments here in the situation involving the New York Rangers, Washington Capitals, a whole Tom Wilson fiasco that was started a couple nights ago. Now the New York Rangers have been fined a whopping $250,000 by the NHL for their comments regarding player safety and George Parros and the statement that went out from the Rangers organization, basically disagreeing with the league, which you can understand to an extent here, but it's not something you normally see how they go about things. Now let's take a look here at the statement from the NHL expressing why the fine was given. It reads here, public comments of the nature issued by the Rangers that were personal in nature and demeaning of a league executive will not be tolerated, said NHL Commissioner Gary Bettman. While we don't expect our clubs to agree with every decision rendered by the Department of Player Safety, the extent to which the Rangers expressed their disagreement was unacceptable. It is terribly unfair to question George Parros' professionalism and dedication to his role in the Department of Player Safety. So obviously this is a pretty hefty fine, and to be completely honest, I'm surprised that it's not a little bit more. We've seen other fines given out in the past. Back, I think it was Doug Wilson and the Sharks got a big fine. I think it was $100,000, and I believe that was like maybe 8 years ago for a major disagreement with the league. We've seen the Capitals get a big fine for COVID protocols earlier this year, which was obviously less than this. So I was a little bit surprised that maybe it wasn't even more. To be honest, I was thinking it could be upwards of $400,000 or $500,000, but this is still pretty substantial. But when you're a billionaire owner like James Dolan, it's really not that big a deal for people like them. But ultimately, it's kind of a situation here where the Rangers are being punished more so for the situation now that took place between Wilson and the Rangers than the Capitals are getting. So Tom Wilson was fined $5,000. You basically saw a lot of outrage. Many people disagreed with that fact. I would be one of them. I thought he should have been suspended. I'm not sure that I agree with the long, lengthy suspension that a lot of people were calling for. Not because I don't, want to defend him and what he did out there, but just based on the rule book, I just don't know that Tom Wilson unfortunately broke a lot of rules. And as I've stated in other videos, in my opinion, the biggest issue here with getting change is the rules need to be changed and what they can do. Because then obviously you can't, go outside of the rule book and just suspend him for 20, 30 games because he's Tom Wilson. Unfortunately, you just can't do that. So as much as he, was dangerous out there and almost came really, really close to having a really severe injury to Artemi Panarin, it's unfortunately, you see stuff like that quite often. If Panarin's helmet had been on, it would have been less dangerous, of course. But, anyways, it's just unfortunate what happened. And as much as I think Wilson should have been suspended, I don't think the league was really in a position to suspend him for a long stretch. I thought maybe a game or two to help cool things down, especially where they both played the following game. We saw what happened last night with a line brawl to start the game with the Rangers and Capitals with all three forwards squaring off against each other. We saw other fights that ensued after Tom Wilson eventually left the game with an upper body injury, which I wonder, and most people aren't even believing the fact that he's hurt. And I can't say that he is or he isn't. Obviously, I don't have any proof on either way, but it makes you wonder if the Capitals might have just pulled him out to attempt to cool things down, because obviously both teams have a fair bit of injuries they're dealing with right now, not all related to this situation, of course, but still, you want to limit the amount of people getting hurt out there. So I'm not sure if there's any more to that or not. But ultimately, we've heard a lot, though, regarding the front office shakeup with the Rangers, of course. After all this happened, yesterday we had the bombshell that John Davidson and Jeff Gorton were fired. Chris Drury's been hired, promoted internally to GM and President of Hockey Operations. They held a press conference not long ago where owner James Dolan had Glenn Sather part of the press conference as well, along with Drury. And it is confirmed that Drury is the president and general manager. And when Drury himself was asked if both titles were permanent roles and somebody else wasn't going to be brought in, he said that was correct. So I know there's a lot of talk out there about Mark Messier maybe coming in as a president of hockey operations. That doesn't appear to be the case. I wouldn't completely rule out, though, Messier coming in some capacity. But if he is or does, then I don't see it being president of hockey operations. Maybe he'll be special consultant. I don't know. But I know Messier had a lot of comments yesterday in different interviews and podcasts that he appeared on, kind of, outlining where he feels the Rangers have gone wrong. And we've heard comments from other people as well. And basically a lot of it boils down to the fact that the Rangers just aren't tough enough. And there really appears to be a major divide here between Davidson and Gorton in ownership, which ultimately led to their dismissal. Now, many NHL insiders yesterday were reporting the fact and being told by their sources with the Rangers that the dismissals were not directly connected to the statement. And a lot of people are not buying that. And to some degree, I do, and here's why. James Dolan has a reputation of being an extremely impatient, impulsive type of owner. We've seen some of the stunts he's pulled with the New York Knicks, who he also owns, and clearly, things can change in a heartbeat. If he becomes unhappy and he wants change, it happens right away with him. He doesn't pull any punches, and the fact here is that I don't think he's patient enough to go through a rebuild, to be completely honest. I mean, most people, myself included, and a lot of NHL executives even would agree, because I know they were asked about this in a lot of anonymous interviews yesterday, where the Rangers were at with the rebuild, where a lot of people surprised about this change, and almost everybody was like, yes, like the Rangers appear to be going in the right direction. They've had a lot of change in the past 3 years since they put the letter out to the fans and gone through this rebuild, and for the most part, like a lot of it's very positive, and but for him, it's not quick enough. So I'm not saying that it's not related to the statement, but I do think that obviously I think it accelerated things. So I wouldn't have been shocked if this would have happened, knowing what I know now, afterwards at the end of the season. But this kind of made things happen a little bit quicker here, a little bit sooner, and we'll go from there. Now, Chris Drury was also asked in the press conference today about the future of head coach David Quinn, and he refused to discuss it. He said he wasn't going to publicly discuss anybody's role within the organization, but ultimately said that everything is going to be evaluated and scrutinized, and that's something he's going to intend to get into here rather quickly. Obviously, the other part of this as well is that they can allow Drury to handle the end-of-season exit interviews and get a lot of thoughts and opinions from the players and the team from their perspective. And we'll see where things go. I mean, ultimately, David Quinn, I think, is still under contract for another year or two. That may play a role, but there's also word. I know ESPN's Greg Wyshynski said that the sources he had said that Drury and Quinn are actually fairly tight. Of course, maybe they both have a lot of connections to the Boston area. They may have known each other previously. I'm not sure. But anyway, like that relationship appears to be good. But at the end of the day, Drury's going to do what's best. I think he knows the owner relatively well after being in the organization a long time. He's seen what just happened to the other guys he was working with, and I'm sure he'll do whatever he feels is best for this team, regardless of relationships. But I personally wouldn't be shocked if Quinn came back, but that he's on a short leash, because clearly, they want to accelerate things, and I wouldn't be shocked if we see some moves this offseason to help with that, and also the fact that they need to be tougher. I think the Rangers did a great job sticking up for themselves against the Capitals last night. I know a lot of the guys that were involved with those fights in responding to the Capitals after what happened were not guys that you normally see doing that, but they kind of held their own. They did all right, and at the end of the day here, they could use some more toughness in their lineup. I don't think there's anybody that's denying that, and not to say that Gorton and Davidson didn't agree with that either, but obviously with this statement, it's pretty much confirmed now that all came from ownership. Davidson and Gorton didn't seem to know much about it and were appalled by it when it came through. They talked to a lot of other league executives apparently who were being asked about it, and they were kind of trying to distance themselves from it, and it sounds like they kind of pushed back against ownership for doing it. And then, boom, down come the hammer here, and it happened now instead of later for these, radical changes, like I said, that he's known for making. He's very impulsive that way. So, it's a situation where he wants to win. He wants to win now, not later. Doesn't think a rebuild should take 5 years, which is not unusually common to be really super competitive again. And that's where we stand here today. But ultimately, the Rangers are fined. Obviously, they have another situation coming up today, which we'll probably talk about in a video later today. But Pavel Buchnevich has a hearing now with Player Safety. So he was the one who took the bulk of the abuse from Wilson, which is what caused the fine in the first place. Obviously, Panera got it pretty bad for he jumped on Wilson, as we know, to kind of get him off Buchnevich. And anyway, that all happened. But Buchnevich last night definitely crossed the line. He ended up cross-checking Anthony Mantha in the face. So he is going to get a hearing. He's definitely going to be suspended, I have no doubt. And as much as it might seem, wrong that Wilson going to slap on the wrist and he's going to be suspended. You can't react that way. And what he did was wrong, and it's within the rules and guidelines for them to suspend him, so I fully suspect that to happen. I do think it kind of sucks in a way that the Rangers seem to be getting more of the punishment here, but it's another clear situation. It's about how you react to things, and just because you can't take that necessarily the eye for an eye approach and not expect some blowback and some repercussions here. But ultimately, the Rangers stood up for themselves, which is the main thing. If teams had a deterrent in their lineup to kind of settle Tom Wilson down, maybe we wouldn't see him take so many liberties. I don't know, but I'm sure that this is not completely over, but hopefully after last night's events, things are kind of squashed and they can kind of move on here. Well, let me know your thoughts on the fine to the Rangers, the likely suspension coming to Buchnevich, the comments we heard earlier from guys like Drury and James Dolan and Glenn Sather in the press conference, and your thoughts on the fines. Let me know what you think down below. We'll discuss further, and hopefully this is the last we have to talk about it, but we'll see if there's any further developments. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.